Hello, hello. Welcome everyone to the Off Day, the newest podcast from Double Take Productions, where we will be covering the whole wide world of sports and even a little bit of our own lives. It's been a while. I have to admit, I don't like how long we've been gone, but we are back. We are better, and I'm so excited to be here once again with Dylan McCaffrey. And Dylan, I have to say, just because you're a Dolphins fan, congrats. Congrats on that second hard-fought win of the season last week. I hope you enjoyed it.
No Tua, no problem. You bring the worst team in the league into the second worst team in the league's house. You know what you're going to get. We just gained a game on the Bills.
Yeah, that's true. It was, in fact, a football game. And we'll leave it at that. I want to get right into the NFL because I feel like that is the hottest sport right now. And obviously, it was kind of a crazy week. I feel like it was like it kind of happened and we were all kind of like, that was weird. Like a lot of
a weird ass week.
Yeah. I feel like the Chiefs, I want to start with them. By far not the biggest upset, them taking down the Packers and whatnot. However, it's funny because we've gone so caught up in them not looking as good as last year and the year before that. We're so doom and gloom. Patrick Mahomes, like, oh, he's a shell of himself, yada, yada. They're a half game back in the division. They're kind of putting themselves in a great spot to make the playoffs once more. Are the Chiefs back? Or, I might jump in the gun a little bit by saying that.
I was never on the boat that the Chiefs were gone. I thought that, this year was a step back, but everyone that was jumping ship and is jumping ship on Mahomes, I can't bring myself to do that. I know that he's put up his worst numbers of his career. This is the worst record they've had in years, but I mean, it's still the Chiefs. And even saying that though, the Packers win wouldn't be what dissuades me from thinking that they're having a bad season. Like maybe Jordan Love.
And I see that.
I can't I'm an Aaron Rodgers supporter his whole career, and it peaked with his John Wick Halloween costume, and then it just has tanked in the last week. My goodness, what a despicable person!
He made an ass out of himself. That's for sure. But
then he dug the grave deeper.
He did. Yes, he did. He doubled down.
And then we had to watch Jordan Love versus Mahomes instead of Aaron Rodgers versus Mahomes.
Which, listen, I think that I do say that I think his poise was there. I don't think he looked like he was, crapping his pants out. I do think that he was not great on third down. I do think that obviously he wasn't as prepared as he could have been. One could ask, when will he be prepared? One could ask if a second-year quarterback with all the time in the world to prepare could have looked better. But I do think that the whole entire thing was kind of out of his control. And he's first game, right? Like, I don't want to call the shots on Jordan Love yet. I think what this game did tell us, though, is that the Chiefs can win in multiple ways. Patrick Mahomes might have had a worse game statistically than Jordan Love. And they still looked very much in control that whole game. I know it is a Aaron Rodgers-less Packers team, which I think that if anything, even with the vaccine stuff, him taking advice from Joe Rogan, I will say his stock as a player went way up. This team looks terrible without him, and Jordan Love isn't going to make the Lazards better. He's not going to make the Cobbs better. It's going to be Aaron Rodgers, and this team looks like nothing without him. But still, a win is a win, and the Chiefs found a way to win, at basically the lowest point of their season in fact, bring them right back to where they need to be. Now, it's funny because one more game doesn't sound like a lot, but I really feel like it's created this longer season where, we can't even now, even this far in the season, could you really say that the jury's out on the Chiefs? I think that this game showed that no, it's not.
The Chiefs are in a fine position right now. The AFC has a bizarre phenomenon going on with the records right now. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4, 5, and 3 teams. There's 4, 5, and 4 teams. There's a 6 and 2 team and a 7 and 2 team. And then there's, the Dolphins, Texans, Jaguars, and Jets who are way below.
It's crazy.
There's the Bills, Chiefs, there's the Bills and the Titans and the Ravens. 5 and 3, 5 and 4 the whole way. And then Dolphins, Jaguars, Jets. So the Chiefs are right in the thick of it. And in 3 weeks, they could be in first place. Next week, they could be tied for first place. But in 3 weeks, they could be like, oh, yeah, the Chiefs are running away with this.
No,
The
for
pack
for
is,
sure.
they're all just like neck and neck right now. And it's unbelievable to say that because like there's like teams that are neck and neck that you would have thought would be running away with it or would be falling way behind. And
Totally.
like the Bills and Patriots just caught up to each other. The Chiefs are catching up on the Chargers. Like this is a backwards year, and this was a backwards week this last week in the NFL. It made no
100%.
sense. The Dolphins won.
Now, two things of what you just said. One, what you said is completely correct, and what makes me scared is that it's really setting up the Pats well. It really, the Pats get better every week, and they're right now at a place where they control their own destiny. They have 2 games against the Bills. Yeah. And we're entering yet another era of Pat's dominance if Mac Jones is as good as he has looked, and the improvement is going to continue the way it has. That being said, I think that we have to, again, look at the Titans, look at the Ravens. I feel like those 2 teams, to me, even with the Derrick Henry injury, they have the strongest identity. Like they know what kind of football they want to play. They know who they are, which says a lot considering that you look at teams without identity, or new identity. The Bengals 3 weeks ago seemed like the best team in town, where everyone was talking about Bengals, Joe Burrow, like how many young quarterbacks do you want over this guy? And it's all come crashing down completely. And now they're last in that division.
They were 5-2. 2 weeks later, they're in last place.
And like who could have thought, right? So I think that you're completely right about the AFC. It's a complete crapshoot. I just think that when you go down to later in the season, when the months get colder, it really identity, knowing who you are and the kind of football you want to play is really it's paramount. It's imperative that you have that. And I think that these teams peaking too early, let's look at my Steelers last year, like 11-0, but you didn't really know what they wanted to do. Like you knew the defense was good, but the offensive identity wasn't there. And when push came to shove, we crumbled. And I think that you can totally see that with a few of these teams. And I that's why I trust, honestly, it pains me to say it, Baltimore as a team that like their brand of football throughout all this craziness, all, Chiefs going up and down, Titans rising, Pats seeming to find their way. They're the only team that has not changed their strategy and changed who they are at all in the past few weeks. And to me, if you're a Ravens fan, that's got to be pretty encouraging.
The Ravens are having a fine year. I thought that they were going to keep dipping. I thought that Lamar Jackson was going to have his breakout season and then kind of middle out, because I just don't think he's a very good passing quarterback. But you're absolutely right. They are one of the few teams, I think, that have just stuck with what they've known for the last few years and been building on an offense. A lot of teams are bringing in new game plans, switching out their offenses and their quarterbacks. And the Ravens have just been on this same Lamar Jackson run-heavy team for years. I think that the Ravens, because of that, are a team that is built to go deep. The Chiefs, obviously, having been there before, are a team that's built to go deep. And then when you look at teams like
I'd push back on that, but okay.
Well, fair enough. But I think that Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs is going to be able to
100%. I just think that us two could score with your quarterback and me running a fade route on them.
That's true. That's fair. But I have faith. The comeback against the Texans, the pedigree is there. They've seen some huge foes facing them, and they haven't backed down. And it's another argument for, unfortunately, the Patriots that they're a team with a lot of guys and a coach that have been there a bunch of times. And I don't know what it is. It doesn't really make sense, but I hate the Buffalo Bills so much. And
it makes sense. It makes sense.
I would almost, I can't decide who I'm rooting for to win this division, because it's all it's been about the last 2 decades has been, let's topple the Patriots. Let's topple the Patriots. And finally someone's doing it. And I think it's just that it's not the Dolphins, when I thought that the Dolphins were going to come in right as the Patriots were going down and swoop it in. And the Bills just took our spot. And our rebuild we just did, they just did it to perfection. And it makes me feel very bitter. But when you compare the Bills and Patriots, I don't know if either of them is that good of a team, or if they've proven they're that good of a team yet.
Yeah.
Because the Bills, they lost to the Steelers. They beat the Dolphins, Who cares? They beat the football team.
Yeah.
Who cares? They beat the Texans. Who cares? They beat the Chiefs, which was impressive at the time, but obviously the Chiefs haven't had the year we thought they
Yeah.
would.
Write that
They
off.
lost to the Titans. They beat the Dolphins in a game they played terribly, and then they just lost 9-6 to the Jaguars. So their losses are bad. Their
It's
wins
true.
are not that impressive. Looking over the Patriots, they lost to the Dolphins. They beat the Jets. They lost to the Saints. They lost to the Bucks. They beat the Texans. They beat the Jets again. They lost to the Cowboys. So you're losing to the Jets. You're losing to the Dolphins. You're beating the Texans. You're beating the Panthers. Like, I'm not super impressed by either of these teams' wins or losses. The Patriots had a good win against the Chargers. The Bills had a good win against the Chiefs. Other than that, I think their hardest games are ahead of them.
Well, I agree, but I will push back on the Pats because we can't forget they were in that game against the Bucks, and if they have any decent weather or a kicker, they win that game. They win that game. And
Yep.
the Cowboys, that's another close game. They pretty much had that within striking distance. And I think that matters, especially in a season where you're right. There's a lot of parity. There's a lot of 5-4 going on, stuff like that. You have to look at context. You have to look at how the record got to that point. And you're looking at a Pats team that's 2 plays away from having 2 more wins. Like, I don't think you can really deny, like, how there's
They also lost
such
by
a
1
thing
point to the Dolphins week 1.
yeah, and Damian Harris
1 point loss
fumbles.
they had to Miami.
He fumbles on the goal line,
exactly.
right? Like, these are growing pains. This is a new team, right? Like, and that's new territory for a team like the Pats, who have had such a solid identity for the last 20 years. It just, in my mind, they're one of the only teams getting better every week. That's saying something.
I agree. And to emphasize that, I don't want to jump too far ahead here, but the leading front runner as of 6/19 on Wednesday to sign Odell Beckham Jr. is the Patriots. So if they can keep adding on to this team, keep improving like that, I think the biggest thing they have to worry about, honestly, to make a deep playoff run is having a rookie quarterback. I think that the rest of their team is built to be able to contend around a great quarterback. Like we saw with Brady, he had to kind of carry them in a lot of spots, but I think they've built this team differently. They brought Kyle Van Noy back. Their defense is looking a little better. Their offense, I mean, not full of playmakers, but I think Odell would certainly turn up the heat. And I think that if Mac Jones is going to be rookie of the year, or if he's going to be a star for a while, then if that can start early this year, they have a shot to do something.
Yeah. The thing about OBJ, I mean, like, he hasn't been a truly game-breaking talent in about 4 years now. If anyone's going to revitalize OBJ's career, it's going to be the Patriots. You saw them basically revitalize Antonio Brown's career. Like they've done it before. And I think that Belichick has talked about OBJ in the past and how he likes him. He thinks that he's an amazing talent.
And OBJ likes Belichick.
100%. I mean, what football guy wouldn't? I just think that I don't think they need him. I don't. And I think it will help. But I think that with the squad they have right now, with the chemistry right now, they've bought into Mac Jones. They've bought into this team. I think you let it play out. I just think you let it play out for a couple more weeks. And if that improvement stays, I don't think you bring in a guy who has shown to be a locker room problem. Like, no buts about it. OBJ is a diva. He's a diva. And
it is curious because that's the same reason, like the diva attitude is why Cam Newton's not on this team. Like he could have been a veteran presence off the bench.
But Belichick knew that Mac Jones could not have this backup who is a diva behind him and being distracting, right? And they went out this offseason, they tried to weapon up and they got a bunch of guys that they believed in. And it's shown that they can win with these guys. They're not even a pass-first offense. They don't run any more pass plays than the Cleveland Browns do. So if OBJ thinks he's going to come to the Pats to have 7 catches a game for 100 yards, it's not going to happen. It's not. So this OBJ, it reminds me a lot of kind of Russell Westbrook, or name the NBA player that has a lot of bite to the name, but maybe not as much impact as you think. Like a lot of notoriety, a lot of respect among the players, but maybe doesn't actually translate to, wins over replacement difference. Like, I don't think that he's there. I think he would have to prove it. And I think the Pats, though a desirable location, might not even need him and don't have an offense that's suited to cater his needs, as opposed to Green Bay, which 100% is a pass first offense, which 100% could use a guy like OBJ. That I think is a much better fit for him. And he can be a diva all he wants. He's not a bigger diva than Aaron Rodgers.
He certainly has a lot to prove because he either is completely right in that he's just been like not targeted and not played with a good quarterback.
Baker sucks. Don't get me wrong. Baker sucks.
Or he's full of it and
Yeah.
he's the problem and he's a diva who just has lost his step. He in his first year with the Browns put up similar numbers to what he did with the Giants, and then in his last 2 years since, he hasn't combined reached those numbers. And what I'll say to his credit is that when he's on the Giants, his catch rate is much higher. That was one of like the biggest things, is that whatever comes his way, he's catching it. He had a 70% catch rate his rookie year. This year, it's 50%. It's gone, up and down 60, 62, but on the Browns, it's never been above 55. So the passes that are targeted to him, he's catching less. And that is either because he has a quarterback that can't throw to him or because he's taking a step back. And I'm excited to see where he ends up next because it's going to be the decider. Like if he can't compete with two straight quarterbacks, it's two quarterbacks faults in a row now. Like you saw Julio Jones put up 1,000 yards a year with his situation, like Megatron putting up 1,000 yards a year on the Lions when they weren't winning any games. Like you have to produce as a receiver, but maybe it is that just Baker hated him. Baker has better stats in the games where he just doesn't play at all. So maybe Baker just won't throw to him, won't look at him. I don't know what the deal was there because they have Odell and Jarvis Landry and Kareem Hunt and their offense. Like, I don't know how you can't double team anyone. I don't know how their offense wasn't blowing through teams all this time. I don't know why Odell hasn't been good.
Because Baker sucks. And like, okay, let me rephrase, because in case some Cleveland fan listens to this and wants to get all tight, let me rephrase. Baker is mediocre. Like Baker is a guy just like Bengals Andy Dalton. Like he might win you a playoff game. He might. And he is good enough to not take you out of games when you have a lead. He, in a lot of ways, could be a great game manager, but he is extremely mediocre. And when you're talking about the number one pick in a quarterback loaded draft, you have a certain expectation. And it's the same thing as Ben Simmons, where everyone's like, oh, we're hard on Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons, like, he's a great player. Let's enjoy Ben Simmons for the player he is. No, Ben Simmons doesn't know how to shoot. And he's the number one pick. And people compared him to LeBron when he came in the league. Let's not forget where we were. Like, people forget, where were we when this guy's career started? Baker was picked because of a hot college football season. And if you want to talk about the team that you have around you, the expectation of the Browns, the hype is there for a reason. We talk about the Browns so often, despite them being mediocre, because they have the talent, because they invested in finally getting the right coach and loading up the backfield, making the offensive line good. It all comes down to quarterback, and the team is mediocre because he is mediocre. And let's be honest, if you're talking about guys who started mediocre, Tom Brady, a guy who didn't start out busting out the gates, having 300-yard games, he had the right attitude. He was coachable. And guys liked him. Yeah. Baker is a douchebag. Let's be real, is a complete douchebag. And some players don't seem to like him very much. And he's been through the coaching carousel. He doesn't seem very concerned with the fact that maybe he is the biggest problem with the team. And to me, this whole entire OBJ saga, yes, it does highlight that OBJ is a diva, but to me, it highlights the fact that maybe he is a voice of many. Where there is smoke, maybe there's fire. Does this team actually think that Baker's going to bring to the promised land? I have serious doubts about that.
I think that's a great way to phrase it because, he's got friends on that team. Like, he's best friends with Jarvis Landry.
Yeah.
And they're also, just those two guys are two of the most talented players, two of the most outspoken, two of the most popular outside of football. So if those two guys are saying, this team's a problem, we don't want to play for this quarterback, we don't play for this coach, that's spreading throughout the locker room. If OBJ is making all this drama, there's guys in that locker room that follow him. And the fact that he's now out, maybe they can rally around it and say he was the problem, let's go win. But it might work out best for everyone that he was a distraction on the Browns and they're better without him. And also, he wasn't being properly targeted and thrown to on the Browns, and he does well elsewhere. It might work out for both sides. I think that it sucks they had to just release him, especially they released him through like 5 days after the trade deadline. Like, if they just figured out this wasn't going to work out 2 weeks ago,
Well,
could have
nobody
gotten
wanted
a
him.
pick.
No, nobody wanted him with that contract.
I think that the interest he's gotten from like the Patriots or whatever, the Patriots would have thrown like their
They wouldn't have
round
taken
pick.
his contract. You much rather wait for him to clear waivers, have the Browns restructure his contract into a bonus, and take it from there and sign him as a free agent. I think that speaks volumes. If a team is saying we would rather wait until you're the NFL equivalent of a buyout candidate player, that is a fall from grace. Like I said, people forget, where was OBJ 4 years ago was the poster child of the NFL.
Yeah.
Like, and whether or not you liked him, his value was undeniable. And that's why I got that contract. Now we're at a place where teams would literally rather wait and have the chance of missing out on you because you're not even worth the contract that's printed on your helmet. So like, listen, this whole entire saga, I think to me, it speaks a lot about two players and two players only, OBJ and Baker. I think the rest of the team, they are solid as they come. I've seen them play twice a year for the last 3 years. Listen, like the defense is legit. They're no joke. I think Stefanski, I've seen a lot of bad Browns coaches. He's not one of them. An offensive line is way better than what we have in Pittsburgh, than what you have in Miami. Like, all the makings are there. To me, it's like, it's a shame that I think all this potential will go down the drain and they will never win a Super Bowl because of Baker. I think that's what it comes down to. Am I wrong? I feel like people want to, when I say this, people are like, oh, you're so hard on Baker. No. Am I wrong? Have I said anything unfair?
You've been saying this for a couple seasons now, and with each season, I agree with you more and more. I think that I'm all the way on board at this point.
It's a tough thing. Now, I think that even more like highlighted is the fact that Case Keenum comes in and the offense looks completely the same, and I think that not that I think it's always a strike, right? Because let's go on to Colt McCoy, because I don't think Colt McCoy's great game is a strike against Kyler. I don't. I think that they just have a really good system going on. I think it's funny because Cliff Kingsbury might have been marked as one of the 5 worst coaches when he first started out. He might be coach of the year right now. He might be coach of the year. Who's ahead of Cliff Kingsbury right now for coach of the year?
I mean, the coach of the year going to the team in first place always makes a lot of sense. So I can't argue against
100%.
that.
But Colt McCoy looking that good too. I mean, come on.
I'm so happy for Colt McCoy. Every I am 2
too.
or 3 years, you just find out like, oh, Colt McCoy is like, he's starting tonight. And then you go watch that game. He'll do something electric. He had like a game on the Redskins where they were like trying to go to the Super or the playoffs, or it was like a game they needed to, maybe it was Thanksgiving, but it was like a big Showtime game on the Redskins, and his parents were there. And it was just so fun to watch Colt McCoy do his thing. In my head, he's still like 23. He's 35. This guy is a vet.
This
is an old man. Comes into the NFL in 2010. That's why I'm thinking of it, because I'm playing Madden 10 and I'm like, who's this new young quarterback? And I still think of like Madden 10 as like a recent Madden. But yeah, he's 35 and he's playing for his fifth team, sorry. And he's still putting up just Colt McCoy numbers, 250 yards, touchdown.
He looked great. I think that, listen, I remember Colt McCoy is the guy that got ruined by James Harrison. Like, I remember all the way back then. Like, Colt McCoy's been around. So it's not like you brought some schmuck in there. He's a vet. He's seen a lot of games. I think it speaks to the Cardinals, though, because like any team that does suspiciously well in the first 8-9 games of a season, you have to be, like I said, a little suspicious. You have to think, like, are they for real? Like, they lose J.J. Watt. Is their defensive identity still going to be there? Is this offense, is Kyler going to miss a few games and this whole thing crumbles apart like last year? Like, there's a lot of questions that I feel like got answered in this game. Like, this team, despite having, I know that Chase Edmonds got injured early in this game. Like, they have rolled with the punches. Like, they have actually, like, they've had injuries. They've had definitely, like, they haven't had a smoothest season. I'll just say that. and the excellence is still there. So even with Cliff Kingsbury, missing, games because he has COVID or whatnot and all this, like they have found a way to still have a great record and to still seem like the favorites, so to speak, in the NFC, which is huge. I think for Arizona fans, you have to be excited. Now it all comes to one caveat. Like this team has no playoff pedigree, like at all. Like we have no idea what it's gonna look like. NFL playoff, you lose one game, that's it. You got one chance every week. So can they lay an egg in the playoffs? It's kind of reminds me of the Jazz. Like, cool, great regular season. You look great. You look like you're changing the game. You look like you have some really talented players. Do it in the postseason. And that's gonna be the narrative for this Cards team, even if Kingsbury's coach of the year, even if they have the best record, even if they have the bye.
They have a better record than the Rams, Packers, and Bucks, but the Rams, Packers, and Bucks are all teams that have been trying to win a Super Bowl for the last 5 years. Mm-hmm. And the Rams made it there. The Bucks did it. The Packers have been on the fringe for a while. The Cardinals, it's been a while. I don't think they have a single guy on their roster from their last deep playoff run.
They don't.
No. So yeah, it's the playoff pedigree you got to worry about, but we're the last undefeated team. They still have the best record in the league, and I personally, I was rooting for the Packers this year. No longer. Now I'm kind of pulling for Matt Stafford.
You have a Kyler shirt though.
I have a DeAndre Hopkins shirt. I have a DeAndre Hopkins shirt. Okay, he won me a clutch fantasy game, and he beat the Bills in a game that kept the Dolphins in first place for a minute. Those were good times.
I just don't want people to forget about that you own a piece of Cardinals gear. It is in your closet right now as we speak.
Hopkins, he's nice, man. He's nice with it. I'll support that guy.
How can you not be a Hopkins fan? Now, it's been a crazy season. I'm really happy about the product this year. I feel like the parity is certainly refreshing. There is no favorite, which I love. I think that another refreshing, or just as much as a refreshing season as the NFL has had, I think the NBA has been just right neck and neck with them. With the whole entire rule changes, the game is tougher. The game feels more like basketball. There's none of these stupid non-basketball plays. And I don't know. Am I crazy? I think the game looks different. Is that just me?
I think the game looks better. Don't tell Damian Lillard I said this because he was complaining today. But like, it's so much more fun to watch for me. Not even like I like the physical play more. I like that they're not calling these fouls. I love watching James Harden flop and then throw his hands up like, whoa, where's my foul? It's funny. It's funny. After all these years of like, oh, this guy, he's averaging over 30 a game. Like not even Reggie Miller could do that. Reggie Miller's not taking 15 free throws every night. Like the amount of Celtics games where I was just beating my head, like watching him go at the free throw line. I don't miss it at all.
No. I think the product is great. I think that they're honestly like when we were watching the Olympics and we're like, oh man, like international basketball, a little more tough. None of these ticky-tack plays. Like, what can we take away? The NBA, they really took that to heart because it reminds me a lot of.
Didn't expect basketball. Them to.
No, I feel like they're gonna change the role like over the cylinder too. Like I feel like that they really paid attention to what was happening and the fan reaction of that product of basketball and how people seem to really have a positive outlook on it. I think I see a lot of similarities. I think that games being more than like 3.5 hours, that was unacceptable. Like it was just unacceptable. And the game being faster, 2 hour and change games, that is beautiful. Like that is exactly how basketball is supposed to be played. And before we go into our little segment about me, I do want to mention Harden because he's become like the poster boy of this NBA change for right or wrong, like he has. And I almost think that it's fair because every call he doesn't get now has been a call he has gotten for the past like 10 years.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a little unfair. I do think it's a little unfair that because he's gotten hacked. He's actually gotten hacked a couple times and they won't call it. And this is the only thing I'm afraid. I bring him up because this is the only thing I'm afraid of with this new rule change is that it's going to be attached to players and not the game. Like it's going to be about certain guys not getting the calls instead of this being the overall thing of the game. because I don't think that's the right way to go about it. And I feel like that maybe it's because he's on the Nets and that's why people don't care and whatever. Um, you're talking about guys' careers, like, and I think that like the whole entire product being better shouldn't come at the cost of like five superstar careers. I think that that part of it needs to be talked about more because right now everyone's pro, great, great, great. It's awesome, it's awesome. That doesn't mean it's perfect. And I think that like someone needs to say like, dude, Harden, yeah, he was ridiculous, but now you can't just go the opposite way with him and play with a man's career just because you're trying to make a point.
I agree.
No, you don't.
I've seen some of the highlights of like him getting slapped in the arm and they don't call it. But he's the boy who cried wolf. This is
That's
a decade
true.
of
It's
like
true. It's true.
if every call, whether you get fouled or not, you look at the ref and complain. Then when you look at the ref and complain this year, he might not call it for you. And I don't have
Right.
sympathy for that. I do have sympathy for the fact that like what Dame actually said today was like Dame was like, when I found out they were changing the rules, I didn't care because I don't go around hunting for fouls. But the way they're calling the game is completely unacceptable. So that's someone who I agree doesn't like, he's not leaning into guys and
Right.
like making like they're basketball plays that he makes. And so now that he said something, I'll get on the train a little bit. When it was just James Harden and Trae Young, like where were foul calls? I was enjoying it very much.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my
Now,
feeling.
now, I want to kind of do a little segment, a little game, because I think that we're still early in the season, and I feel like we don't really know exactly what is fact and what is fiction when we're looking at it, right? And I feel like uh, the same kind of parody that we're seeing, like we're seeing in the NFL, we're seeing in the NBA. Like, I like that the Warriors without Clay are doing so well. I like that the Heat are doing well. I like that certain teams, though I don't enjoy the Celtics not doing well. A lot of teams with a lot of great pedigree are kind of struggling. So I want to kind of try to work to clear that up, trying to delineate between what is facts, what is fiction. So that's what exactly we're going to do. We're going to play a game. We're going to ask each other some questions, and we're going to ask the other person whether or not they think it is a fact or it is fiction. So I'm going to start just to set the precedent, and I want to start with a hot topic, maybe one that's talked about a little too much, but I think it's worth us bringing up on the first day of the off day. Ben Simmons will be traded before the All-Star break. Facts or fiction? It's a toughie.
It's a toughie because if the question was has Ben Simmons has played his last game as a 76er,
Oh, that's
I would say yes.
Mail that in. Yeah.
I'll say facts for this because
Wow.
I think it's tough, but I think some contender is going to come along and say, "Hey, if your asking price is low enough, we'll take him." Because on the call with the Celtics the other day, the Celtics were reportedly interested for a couple hours. The Sixers asked for Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, Robert Williams, and a first-round pick. And
that was a false story. I wanted to talk about that. Was a fake story. They did not ask for that. They did not actually ask for that.
I was gonna say that's a Kawhi Leonard haul. That's a James.
Yeah.
That's not a Ben Simmons haul.
No.
If that was their asking price, it would be a long way to come down to where they can get him to be actually tradable. And I think the deadline, because the Sixers will be looking to bolster their championship hopes. If they get halfway through the season and Ben Simmons is still just on the bench, like refusing to play, and they're still in first place, they have no choice but to say, we have a chance at a title this year. Let's turn Ben Simmons into something and make this run. They can wait till the offseason, but like how many times you get healthy Embiid for a whole season? Like you got to take these opportunities. Maybe it's just that you bring him back and he's the piece that helps you make a playoff run, but either some contender who wants to bolster things like the Warriors or something, go get Ben Simmons, or some terrible team is willing to give up some stock that'll help the Sixers win and they get their star for the next 10 years. Maybe Minnesota. I honestly, I've given up on Minnesota so much. I think they're going to be selling at the trade deadline. That could be an option. So I'll say, Ben Simmons, he's gone.
Now, real quick before you ask your next one, I actually want to say, I think it's fiction. I don't think he's going to get traded. And it's for two reasons. One, his value is, it is at Dogecoin level lows right now. Like, you can't get even Brogdon or CJ McCollum for him anymore. That's how low it's gone. That's how bad this has gone. Nobody even trusts him. If you're not even, and I'm going to my second point. It's a paradox with Ben Simmons because He wants to play in a contender, but I don't think contenders believe in Ben Simmons because Ben Simmons has exactly this many zero big playoff moments under his name. No, there is no Ben Simmons game. Like he has shown time and time again, he comes up small in the playoffs. So if you're a contender, why would you go for Ben Simmons? Would that make any sense to anybody to go for Ben Simmons? Like, I don't know. I don't think so, especially at the state that he's in and the mental, softness that he's shown that he's a mental midget. I don't think that contenders want him. And on the other half of that, Daryl Morey is reaching Jack Nicholson like movie levels of, psychotic, where he thinks he's gonna get a Jaylen Brown or a Dame or anyone. He's not getting that, but he believes he is. So I think this has reached a stalemate in so many different ways, like an unbelievable amount of ways, where nobody wants him. The guy wants more. Nobody's willing to give it. He's not going to play, so it makes his value even lower. I don't know how this ends. I'm going to be real. I've never seen anything like this in my entire life of being a sports fan. I seriously have never seen a stalemate as bad as this one with a player as high of a profile, a number one overall pick, end up like this. But I do think it's fiction. I don't think it's going to happen. But anyways, on to your question.
On to my question, yes. We can keep on the Ben Simmons talking for a second because he's one of my three. He wasn't my first question, but since we're on the topic, Ben Simmons will never be an all-star again.
Oh, fiction. Listen,
because to be an all-star, you have to be not only you have to be good and performing on a team that wins, you have to have the fans like you and the players.
Yes. Let's not. Okay. I just spent all this time talking about how Ben Simmons has no value right now and how he's never had a good playoff moment. Those are all still true. However, let's not forget who Ben Simmons can be. Like in the transition, he's a top 5 player. In perimeter defense, he's a top 5 player. In facilitating, he's a top 10 to 15 type player. He's a talented guy. Like he really is. And I will say that the one part of this whole Ben Simmons saga that I could see on his side is that they tried to trade him. And if they want to say, hey, this is business, he can say, oh, this is business too. I'm making a bet on myself. I don't care how bad this gets. This is my business decision. Is it a good business decision? We'll see. I don't think it is. But if he can claim this is a business, then, I think that this whole entire thing, you can't forget that he is still a valuable player. Like, he is still like a guy that is young, that is talented, that can become one of the better point guards, at least defensively, at least in the entire league. So if you're talking about an all-star appearance, like, man, like Jeff Teague's made an all-star team. Like, okay, like he needs to have one good half of a season on any team. I could totally see him scoring 20, 10, and 5 on a team like the Rockets, on a team like that. So will he make another all-star team? I think so.
I agree. I think he's got more in the tank. I think by the end of his career, he will have at least a free throw, at least a mid-range, at least something. Maybe not a 3, but I think that if he takes this whole season with the Sixers and just locks himself in a gym, he should be able to figure out how to make a free throw. And
I would hope
those
so.
all-stars appearances should be coming back. All right, what do you got?
Number 2. All right. This one's gonna hit home. Might spark some emotions in you, right? No. And I'm not gonna ask you to put those aside and be just very objective about this. The Celtics or a non-play-in playoff team, facts or fiction? Ooh, he's thinking. He's pondering.
I'm thinking, and I'm gonna say facts. You asked me to put my emotions aside. That's never happened in the history of this show.
Okay, that's fair.
I'm not thrilled with the job that Ime has done through the start of the season, but I love our 7 best players or our 6 best players. I love Smart, Schroeder, Brown, Tatum, and then Horford or Schroeder comes out. You put in Robert Williams. I think that those guys are getting better at closing out games somewhat. And I just think that is a extremely good defensive lineup who, as they play more together, will become a deadly lineup. I think that can be a real thing that happens. I've wanted it for a while. I want us to be a defensive team. And I think that all the pieces are there. All the pieces are there. We just need someone to point us in the right direction, and we'll fire on all cylinders. And I think it's gonna happen. I think that we get to the playoffs. No playing game. I have faith. I'm a Celtics fan.
Now, just real quick, I just want to say I don't feel the same way about Marcus Smart. I don't think you say what you say about Jalen and Jason publicly. I think that his edge as a leader has completely gone out the window because his play has declined. I think he needs to be traded if we're going to be a play-in playoff team. And I think that Josh Richardson is honestly should just be released at this point. He's just an absolute shell of himself. And there's no reason for him to be getting minutes over Pritchard at this point.
I do want to see Pritchard play more. That's for sure.
Yeah, like he is an absolute liability. And the fact that he is what we ended up with this whole trade exception, whatever fiasco is pathetic to say the least. Now, I'll move on to your question before I get too ranty about that.
Marcus Smart, you're really out on him just like that?
We love this. Listen, this is the Marcus Smart fan club podcast. Like, all right, but he has reached an end. I mean,
it's been a bad year.
You can't call out your teammates like that so early in this. Like, you are showing weaknesses in the chemistry of this team. It's making Udoka's job just so much harder. But anyways,
can't argue with that. Number 2 for me, if Klay Thompson returns in full form, the Warriors are winning the finals.
Warriors are winning the finals. Now, it's going to be, I don't want to cop out on you because I think it's possible, but I'm going to say fiction just because I want to see how this Lakers team fills out. As much as I don't think that Westbrook is a playoff winning player. I think that I've already hashed that out enough. However, he is substantially better in second halves of seasons than the first half. He's looked terrible so far, but I do believe that he's going to pick it up eventually. And I think it's going to come on a really great point where Davis and LeBron are going to want to really take some time off, not play back-to-backs. If the Lakers are smart about that and come into the playoffs healthy, I'm still taking that team over anyone in the West. I think that Steph, though a great player and has great playoff moments, has not always been the same guy in the playoffs. And he doesn't have KD to bail him out. So this is not like, let's not compare this Warriors team to Dynasty Warriors teams. They're not the same team. They're not. So in a weird way, you would say that they're a little bit unproven because outside of Steph, Draymond, and Klay, this is not the same team at all. So this is Toscano Anderson's big year. This is, all the other guys.
Gary Payton Jr.
Yeah, Payton, who's been an absolute revelation for them. Like, it's going to be guys like that are going to be tested the most. And I'm not ready to say that is better than what the Lakers have, right? At least in a playoff setting.
They're 9-1. They're in first place, and that's without Klay. So I think that whatever they got going on over there, if it keeps working, they have a very legitimate shot. My dream is LeBron Warriors conference finals, and then whoever they can play the Celtics or whatever. But one more time, LeBron, Steph, I need it.
100%. And before I move into my
without KD, LeBron and Steph without KD, It's just LeBron versus Steph and Klay and Draymond. It's back to business.
That's beautiful. And before I move on to the last question, I will say the only way that a Nets finals appearance will be tolerable is if it's Nets Warriors and it's Steph versus KD. It is all right. You came to my team. You were mad that I was the guy and you weren't. You left. Let me lay the smackdown on you and set the record
straight. He's got Kyrie next to him. Kyrie's like, he back for more.
Right. There's a lot of storylines
if Kyrie
there.
Plays.
Yeah, we'll see about that. Now, my last question.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how good the Utah Jazz do in this regular season. Facts or fiction. In terms of a playoff, in a playoff sense, it does not matter how good the Jazz look this season.
Facts. The Jazz suck. Oh my gosh. What a sorry team.
No.
The playoffs last year, like going into the playoffs, I was like, wow, are the Jazz really going to keep this up? And Rudy Gobert immediately got figured out. They figured out that if they just make Rudy Gobert cover the guy shooting threes in the corner, they get that shot every time. And that was lights out. It only doesn't matter, not because the Jazz aren't a good team. It's been there for a while and it's been, getting better each year. It's because it doesn't matter how much they try or how much chemistry they have. They won't beat the Warriors and the Lakers.
Yes.
and I can keep listing, but I don't need to.
No, okay. So I 100% agree with what you just said, and I actually don't care if the number one seed again, and if they win 60 games. I need to see them win in the playoffs. I need to see them not get exposed. And that's gonna be with Donovan Mitchell healthy, which hasn't also happened. So I'll give him a little bit of leeway on that, right? He's kind of been compromised, but I completely agree with what you said. I'm ready to move on to your next question because I think that you placed it very nicely how they've been kind of disappointing to say the least.
Yeah. This last question I alluded to a little bit before, and it's a little bit of a puzzler. Maybe I'm just being a jerk, but my last one, the Detroit Pistons, the 1-8 Detroit Pistons, will figure out how to be a playoff team again before the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Before the Timberwolves?
Yes.
Fiction.
Okay.
Because the Timberwolves have something that the Pistons don't, which is good players. Yes. And not only good players, tradable players. Karl-Anthony Towns can be on the move this offseason. He can be on the move this season. And you can bet your bottom dollar that there is a contender looking for a score first, an absolute devastating offensive player that is Karl-Anthony Towns. I mean, he gets Regan about, he's called soft. You call whatever you want. This guy is an amazing offensive talent. And on a team like the Celtics, on a team like even call anything short of the Sixers or the Nuggets, who already have like dominant big men, anything outside of them, he's helping that team win. He is. So that's a guy. Anthony Edwards, I mean, he might be the best athlete in the league right now. Like he is crazy. His first step, his ability to just dunk over anybody, and he's really figuring out his game. I think that once they get Russell out of there, listen, D'Angelo Russell, I mean, ship him off to Detroit. Like, what a loser. Like as soon as that happens, I think this team will move in a better direction. I think that they have young, hungry players. And honestly, like I would say that they're one trade away from being in a really, really good spot culturally, a really good spot like going forward. I think the frustrating thing for Timberwolves fans is that they feel that they have the pieces and that they're close. And I don't entirely disagree with that.
But it's been that way for so long. Do you remember
That's not true.
Do you remember when the Timberwolves, when it was Cat, Zach LaVine, and Andrew Wiggins? That was a long time ago.
You really believed in that team, though? LaVine was nowhere near where he was now. Wiggins, I've never believed in.
They also had Lauri Markkanen on that same team. They traded it all for Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler dragged them kicking and screaming to the playoffs. They got rid of him, even though he was the only player that was bringing
cared about
wins.
Winning. Yeah.
And now they're talented. They have Karl-Anthony Towns. They have D'Angelo Russell. They have Anthony Edwards. They're still losing. I don't think that this group with this coach, with this owner, this organization are going to figure it out. And I think that trading Cat will be the first step of a huge rebuild, or just a first step of like, let's build around Anthony Edwards and get on his timeline. Yeah. And I think that Cat does get traded. Did you hear him the other day say how, a 3-game losing streak can turn into 19 or 20 overnight?
He sounds like a Vietnam vet.
He sounds like a broken man.
Yeah, he's seen too much. Like
the Pistons, I have no love for, but they just got Cade Cunningham, and they'll probably get another first-round pick this year, and then they might be in business.
It's true. When you're talking about a team like Detroit, you really are you're hoping that Cade is the guy that he's supposed to be, and you're hoping that you have another lottery pick. You luck out and get another guy. Maybe, the kid from Duke, Ranchero, or maybe Chet Holmgren from Gonzaga. There's a lot of talented guys in this year's draft. I just think that there's nothing better than knowing what you got. There's a great pick out there for the Pistons, and that's awesome. They can screw it up and get another Darko. Like, that you have Russell, who you can sucker some team in that thinks that they need scoring and thinks that he's a winning player. Even though I don't think he's even been on the defensive end of the court, or if he has, I haven't even seen it or seen the impact of it. You have a guy in Cat who you can get a haul for Cat. You can get a lot for Karl-Anthony Towns.
Yeah.
And Anthony Edwards, in my opinion, I'm a LaMelo guy. I've always been a LaMelo guy, but I've never thought that that taking him over LaMelo was an atrocity or anything like that. Anthony Edwards is going to be an amazing player, and I think you definitely build around him. So it's just about the assets. It's the same way I feel about the Celtics right now. Like, we might not be playing as well as we could, but we have a lot of tradable assets to make something happen, which gives me hope about the future. If you're Detroit, I don't think you're taking a lot of phone calls about Sadiq Bey. I don't think that he's a great player, don't get me wrong, but you're not taking a lot of phone calls about the other guys on your team. No one's interested. So it's a whole different situation. I think the Timberwolves are close to being a play-in team.
People love to throw Marcus Smart and Robert Williams' name into every trade. And once we sign next year with our max cap spot, like a Bradley Beal or someone, and then make a trade, that might be a recipe for success. I also just think, one last note for Ian, I think it's very funny that just 2 years ago, I was trying to figure out whether Kemba Walker or D'Angelo Russell was going to win us a championship on the Celtics. And just
answer is neither.
Their careers have just immediately dropped off a cliff.
I think
Kemba had an MVP year. D'Angelo Russell could not miss from the mid-range against the Celtics. And
I was just about to say, I think you thought the way about D'Lo because he would absolutely cook us when he was on the Nets. But yeah, it was all facade, and it's unfortunate because I think if he was anywhere close to the player that you thought he could be in Brooklyn, I think the Timberwolves would be like an AC team. I really do. I just think he completely anchors them to the depths of mediocrity with the way that he plays defense. And Kemba is not too dissimilar. Well, anyways, it's been great. I feel great to be back. I don't know about you. I'm glad to shake off all the rust. I'm glad to get back to the grind of it all. That's going to do it for the first episode of the Off Day. Remember to subscribe, listen to us on Apple Podcasts as well. Dylan, is there anything that you want to finish with before we leave?
Tomorrow night, prime time Miami Dolphins football under the lights.
Baby.
We're gonna beat the Ravens, and we're gonna get this league to be all 500 for the first time ever. We're just gonna middle it out. Go Dolphins!
I'm excited for it. I just want to make a disclaimer to our listeners: do not bet any money on what Dylan had just said. Maybe bet the under. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe they get a close game. I'm excited for you, man. I hope you get that third win this season. Things are trending up for us. And we will catch you on the next edition of the Off Day. Take care.
Take care.